What's up, everyone? BGJ Tech Nerd here today. And today's special guest, Robert Ingram from Mcdojolife. Good morning, my dude. Or good afternoon, I should say. How are you doing?
What's up? Life is good, man. You're looking at it just kind of like we were talking earlier, getting over a little bit of a cold, but other than that, I'm doing good.
Oh, man, you sound better than me. That's for sure.
I try.
I'm always getting sick with my son. That's the thing. Like with daycare, I'm sick like every second week. So whatever. This is my natural voice now. So I just sound sick all the time.
When I used to teach kids full time, like teaching martial arts to kids all the time, like I would be sick all the time. It was the worst.
It's part of the game. So, Rob, now that I have you here, I want to always ask you, how did the idea Mcdojolife come to you? Like, how did it start? When did this start for you?
Well, Mcdojos has been a term. The term Mcdojo has been around well before I ever even thought about starting martial arts. So that's not a term I came up with. But the concept just all started off a conversation that I had with a student. At the time, I was a striking coach at the Jiu-Jitsu Academy I was training at. Also, a blue belt at the time. So I was assisting with classes, helping out with kids' classes, helping out as a program director there. So I wore a lot of hats at the facility. And during a noon class, my boss had called in and said, "Hey, man, I'm not going to be able to make it. Would you do me a favor, teach class today?" And I was like, "Cool, not a problem. I could do that." So after the noon class was over, most of the guys either had to go back immediately to work or they just had off for the day. So all the guys who had off for the day, we'd stand around and we'd chit chat for a while. And we got on the subject of Mcdojos. Mm-hmm. And we talked about that for quite a while in depth. And everyone left except for one guy. It was like his second class ever. He had signed up officially, and this was his first official class. And he pulled me to the side and he goes, "Hey, man, I'm a little embarrassed. You guys got on a topic I don't know anything about. What's a Mcdojo?" And I kind of explained to him a little bit about what that was. And he asked me why no one did anything about that. And that was a very good question. And I started really thinking about that. At the time, I had been in the industry for a very long time. April will mark my 20... Man, I started when I was 12. So I guess it'll mark 26 years in the industry as of April. So been at this for a while, but it was never a question that was really brought up to me before. Mm-hmm. Why doesn't anyone do anything about that? And that led down a rabbit hole of issues like, first of all, there's no requirement whatsoever for anyone to start a martial arts academy. You need nothing. You don't even need any martial arts training. You don't need to have a black belt. You need absolutely nothing to start a martial arts school other than just a business license. And that's it. So that seems like for such an important, what most people in society view as like this Mr. Miyagi type of honor and integrity and respect, that it has no regulating bodies whatsoever. And so I started thinking about that more and more. And the next day, I couldn't get the thought out of my head. So I started Mcdojolife.
That's nice. So really that one question really set you on your path to like the whole Mcdojolife on, that's pretty cool. Sometimes it just takes that one moment to like, oh my God, brainstorm that idea and just take you to your journey. And like we are today now, like over 500,000 subscribers on Instagram. Did you ever like imagine you reaching this level of followers?
I mean, at the time, Instagram wasn't even a thing. So when I started Mcdojolife, I think April will mark 11 years. But when I started Mcdojolife, Instagram didn't exist. Instagram, when it did exist, it was just photos. So like when I first got on Instagram, they didn't do videos at all. So by the time I got to Instagram, it had already been a thing for a little while, but it was only dedicated to photos. So all I did was like share some memes or whatever on that page at the time. But all of my deep undercover, like long form expose pieces were on Facebook because I didn't at first share my face on my page. It wasn't something I did for like the first 4 years. YouTube was a thing, but it wasn't what it is now. And like even then with YouTube being probably one of the bigger social media search engines for content like that, it wasn't something that I had figured out how to use yet. So even my first like several years, I didn't really get into making YouTube videos until like a couple years back. Like, and then when I did, it was just interviews because I didn't know how to make content. I had no clue how to do any of that. So I didn't think that was something it was a hobby. It wasn't
Yeah.
something that I thought was going to be a full-time career. I also didn't think I'd have as much content as I do,
Mm-hmm.
but it evolves over the years. What winds up happening is, you're in this niche of the martial arts industry, then you're making content based off of some of the more nefarious things that are going on in the industry. But then you become the guy somewhere along the line. Someone says you're the guy that does this thing,
Exactly.
and whether you like it or not, that was what you built. And so you have to stick to your guns and keep going down that path. So then you start getting sent like the really serious stuff, like the frauds and the murders and the rape cases and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And then you have to start covering those stories. And so, no, I didn't ever think it would be like that. I thought I would just poke fun
Yeah.
at some people who were just doing some weird, bad martial arts. But then you start to realize the bigger scope of things is, again, there's no regulating body. So there is no one keeping these people in check at all. So it kind of becomes more of a responsibility than I originally thought.
So my next question was going to be like, when you first started, I think you kind of answered it. So when you first started, you thought, like for me, when I first followed you, I was like, oh my God, this is like hilarious stuff. Like, it's so funny. But after a while, like it's funny. It's funny. But holy crap, this is really serious. So for you, when you first started, did you want it to be more of a joke kind of thing? Or did you find out in the beginning, like, oh my God, this is a serious, there's some crazy people out there that can hurt like children, and there's like my question is like, did you want it to be more funny in the beginning, and then you figured out it was going to be like something more serious? Like,
well, I think they go hand in hand. Like, I think if you really want to communicate to people that you don't know, one of the best ways to break the ice is to be humorous. Like no one wants to listen to the dude who's always depressed all the damn time. Like, if you had a buddy who was like at least funny, you'd be like, well, he's a dick, but he does say some stuff that makes me laugh. Like, when you're dealing with stuff like this, I think there are stages that people go through. I think when they first see it, yeah, it seems funny. It's not meant to be funny. It's meant to be serious. But because the way that it looks, it comes off as hysterical. Yeah. Because the reality hasn't sunk in yet for someone who's new to it. Yeah. The reality is that, yes, this is hilarious. But then you have to sit back and then you take a broader scope of things and you realize, oh my God, these people are actually paying to learn this. Then you think, oh my God, what happens if this person actually tries to do this to defend themselves? Yeah. Then you think, oh my God, well, how else is this instructor taking advantage of people? And what's really crazy is the people who usually take advantage of people the most usually hide behind the fact that they're good at martial arts. And so what people have labeled as McDojos over the years, the common denominator is actually complete bullshit. Yeah. The things people argue online about that they call a McDojo are the farthest thing from a McDojo in reality. But it's almost been like what's been in pop culture for so long, people just go with it. So you'll get people who just say, oh, karate's bullshit, not even thinking what they're saying. Yeah. They'll say that, but then they'll be fans of GSP, Kyokushin Karate Black Belt. They'll be fans of Stephen Thompson, who's like a Shotokan Black Belt, I think, Kempo Black Belt. Kempo. You have somebody like John Hackelman, who's a black belt in a form of karate, a karate stylist. You have all of these incredibly talented black belts in traditional martial arts. I mean, I can think of lists of people who have black belts in Taekwondo, who were UFC champions. And so all of these people who just say arbitrarily, karate's bullshit. Yeah. That is the echo chamber that seems to happen over and over again from people who are so uneducated in what's going on. It's almost comical. But it's sad because that's what they're labeling as a McDojo. When in reality, it's the farthest thing. Like, first of all, on one hand, someone will complain that it takes someone in Taekwondo 2 to 3 years to get a black belt. And they'll laugh at that. They think that that's hysterical. And most people, when I say that, automatically agree. It's a knee-jerk reaction. Having a black belt should take you longer. As a matter of fact, you yourself right now are probably thinking, yes, it should take you longer to receive a black belt. And then what winds up happening is people forget about people like BJ Penn, who got his black belt in 3 years. And then all of a sudden they go, well, that's different. No, the fuck it's not. It's not. What it is subjective to your standard. And everyone's standard's different. So at the end of the day, if we're going to sit there and say it's bullshit to get your black belt in 2 to 3 years, okay, then that should be universal. It shouldn't be caveats and the what ifs. Then if we're saying that, then what we're saying is skill is subjective. One person who might be good locally might not be good at a state level. Well, if
Exactly.
you're good at state, you might not be good at a national, or you might not be good at international level. Like, just because you're good as compared to the people around you does not give you an actual metric on what is and what is not good. Like, imagine if we all set the standard of, if you can't beat Gordon Ryan, you're not a black belt. How many black belts would be around?
Zero.
Exactly. So, like, I mean, we would, at that point, we're saying basically
So
Andre
like,
Galvo can't be a black belt anymore, right? Well,
yeah,
that's the
take them
standard
all
you set.
back.
So at the end of the day, the standard is, are you yourself getting better at the thing that you set out to get better at
Yeah.
by using martial arts? If you wanted to lose 30 pounds,
Mhm.
right? And you go to a cardio kickboxing studio and they tell you the truth. They say, hey, man, we're going to teach you some basic punches, some basic kicks. But at the end of the day, your goal is to lose 30 pounds. We'll help you get you there. And then you do, then that's not a McDojo. They're telling you the truth. They're getting you from point A to point B, and you're reaching your goals. Now, if you went to a cardio kickboxing studio and they said, we're going to make you a world champion kickboxer, but they don't do any of the implementations of the tools and drills that you need, no sparring, no mitt work, they're not going to have, no one there actually knows how to get you from point A to point B, well, they're lying to you.
Mhm.
That's a McDojo
Yeah.
because they didn't tell you the truth. So the hardest part of all this has been trying to battle the status quo of what people think a McDojo is when they're so far off base, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, for sure. Like I know sometimes I can make fun of like I never took karate, but I'll always make fun of like karate and jujitsu like in a funny way. I'll never call like the McDojo of anything, but like that got me thinking of like how I when I was following your channel and I went from okay, it's really funny to oh my god, this is becoming serious. It's one post you made that really stuck to me, and this is where I'm like, oh my god, this is becoming serious. And for the listeners listening in right now, I want to say it's this guy basically sitting on a couch. He looks like he has this afro from the 70s. He's in his slippers and he's basically beating people from the couch. It's funny as hell, but that's not the fun. It's not the most important part. The important part for me was in the thread I was reading, and someone was at that class saying, "Hey man, I was at that class. His shit works." I'm like, "Are you fucking joking?" He was sitting down. Obviously, it's staged, and it's like I always try. I can't digest like what's crazier, the instructor, or the person trying to create this cult, this whatever they want to call it, or the people who are just listening to this individual saying, no, that works. It's like, I don't know which way to go. Like, who's like, I think the instructor has an idea what he's doing. He knows it's not working, or maybe it is working in his mind. But the people who are like just who believe this, it's like I feel so bad for them. That's the scariest part. And then they go out into the real world. We're gonna sit on a couch and beat someone up, kind of thing. Let me get a chair, buddy. I'm gonna kick your ass. Just let me get a chair right now. It's
Well,
like,
think about if you we don't know what we don't know. So a lot
yeah,
of people in the martial arts industry, we already have an idea based off our own experiences of what we're looking at. What has worked for us, what hasn't worked for us,
mm-hmm.
our own personal experiences. What we forget is that a lot of these particular cults prey on people's inexperience, and their ability to be manipulated. And we could all be manipulated, no matter what anyone wants to say.
Yeah, we could.
Any of us could be manipulated. It's all in timing. It's all in technique. And I'll get to that in a second. But what I wanted to touch on with this conversation is what you just said, which is so important. Who's worse? Is it the
Mm-hmm.
victims or is it the people who were the cult leader? Well, imagine if you did something that you didn't know anything about. Most of the time, we can just go down to like a mechanic. Like, let's say your car is broken, you know nothing about how to fix a car. What you wind up doing is you have a lot of trust in the fact that this person is a professional in their industry. So you go to the professional with the trust that they will help you out because that's what their job is supposed to be. So then you wind up taking your car to this professional mechanic and you say, hey, my car is broke. Can you fix it? They say, hey, leave it here for the day. We'll get back with you tomorrow and we'll let you know all the things that are wrong with it. So you wind up getting a phone call and they say, A, B, and C is broken. We need to fix it. It's going to cost you this much money. Most people, 90% of people on the planet are going to go, okay, fix it. And they're going to pay. Why? Why don't we question that? Is
True.
because we know that person is a professional. We have no clue what we're looking at. They're telling us what's wrong. So we trust them. We pay them. What would stop them from just saying A, B, and C is broken when only A is really messed up?
Yeah, it's true.
We would never know. We
Yeah.
would never know. And it's just simply because we're ignorant as to what is wrong with our car. Now, would we, like taking that exact same analogy, if someone got ripped off by a mechanic, would we blame the victim at all?
Hmm.
No,
Yeah,
because they just
probably
don't
not.
know.
Exactly.
But when we look at martial arts, we look at that kind of stuff and go, well, how the hell doesn't anybody already know this? It's because we all started from zero.
Yeah.
And these people are being taken advantage of by professional con artists. And for anyone out there who thinks that you cannot be taken advantage of, it's just as simple as a few questions. Very simple, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'll ask you, and we'll go down that path, okay? So, are you a professional surgeon?
No.
Do you think you'd be better at performing open heart surgery than a surgeon?
Probably not.
There's no probably. If you're not a surgeon, you're not.
No, I'm not.
There's no. You will literally just open someone's chest up and they will die. Right.
Got
That's
the
all.
scissors. I'll stop there.
So, are you a lawyer?
Nope.
Do you think you'd be better at law than a lawyer?
Nope.
Are you a mechanic?
No, not really.
Do you think you'd be better at fixing a car than a professional mechanic?
No, not at all.
Are you a con artist?
I don't think so.
Then do you think you'd be better at conning people than a con artist? The answer is no.
No.
It's just simply no.
Yeah.
Just as black and white as it is, you can't perform open heart surgery. You're not going to do good in law against a lawyer. You're not going to be better as a mechanic than a mechanic. You're not going to be as good at conning people and understanding a con as a con artist.
Yeah.
That's the thing people always seem to forget.
Yeah,
They think con artist is just something that someone exists as. No, con artist is a profession. It's a job that requires technique and skill and crafting and making yourself better. It's the same equivalent of the guy that comes into the jiu-jitsu academy off the street and says, I'm going to be a professional fighter. And they go, really? Have you ever fought before? In the streets. Undefeated in the street. Oh, so have you ever taken class? No, man, no classes. Don't need it. I just go red. I see red. I handle it. Okay, well, sign the waiver. And then they get their ass whooped. Yeah. Why? Because everyone in that room, when they hear that guy talking, knows for a fact that that person knows nothing about what's about to happen to them. Why? Because everyone in that room already went through the process. They already know what the techniques are. They already understand that it is a skill, that you don't get lucky at this, that you do have to practice. Con artists are the same way. The only difference is that a con artist relies on the fact that everyone around them thinks it's not a skill. Mm-hmm. So it's so easy to manipulate people when they don't know they're being manipulated because they just simply don't know the technique. Most people who have been conned have no clue they were conned and smiled and laughed and enjoyed the entire process and will never know their entire life that they've been had. Never know it, because that's how a con artist operates. They want you to believe it was your idea. So for everyone who thinks that you cannot be conned by a con artist, yeah, you absolutely can. And it's easier to con you when you don't think you can.
Yeah, that's probably true. It is true. And of course, like, now they doing Mcdojolife on Instagram, and it's a good way to really like see what's going on in the real world. But like, let's be honest, there's not really legally we can do to stop these type of people, right? Besides like posting stuff on Instagram and like, you know, do you think?
Well, legally, it depends on what they've done. Okay. So, for instance, the fight sports. Here's a good example. When fight sports drama was going down, that news story made it all the way to the New York Times. That was published, that there was a instructor there who actually did sexually assault a woman. Mm-hmm. Legally, you can go after the guy who sexually assaulted someone, right? Because that's against the law. You're not allowed to do that. But at the end of the day, spreading awareness is something that we can all do. Mm-hmm. And changing the status quo. We can all start looking past stupid, petty shit to argue about and start arguing about real problems. Someone will argue that, oh my God, this person over here, it took them 2 years to get their black belt. That's a Mcdojo. Meanwhile, that person, like let's say Taylor Lautner. You know who Taylor Lautner is?
No.
He's an actor. He was in the Twilight movies, right? He was a black belt as a child. And I mean a young child.
Okay.
So when he was a black belt, when I was coming up through the NASCA circuit, sport karate. Mm-hmm. When he was coming up through the ranks as a child, as a black belt child, by the universal martial arts standard, right? Okay. This is like a kid, so he has no business having a black belt. Now, go down the path of his career. He started off as a child black belt who, on the sidelines, in between doing like competition, would be studying or doing homework, right? Meanwhile, he winds up getting a job as an actor as a child on Shark Boy and Lava Girl, I do believe was one of his first films. Then he winds up growing up. He winds up getting this major movie franchise in the Twilight movies. He winds up becoming super famous from that. He winds up hosting an episode of Saturday Night Live as a martial artist, which is very rare. You don't see a ton of martial artists, go on there and host. Then after that, he winds up having this movie career that continues to extend past that, all because of his opportunity that he had as a kid who pushed to use martial arts as a tool, stepping stone to better himself. Meanwhile, all those people who had all that bravado, oh, a kid black belt, that's bullshit. They most likely don't even fucking train anymore. Meanwhile, they line up paying for their daughters to go watch this Heartthrobs movie, and they're lining his pockets because he took the time to not give two fucks about what they thought about him and was working on bettering his craft, and then he ends up getting paid from all of those disgruntled martial artists any goddamn way. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting what our standards are of what a martial artist is. Yeah. Here's a question for anyone who wants to talk about what makes a martial artist. What was Bruce Lee's title that he had? What was like was he a heavyweight champ? Was he a lightweight champ of something? Who did he beat?
It's true.
Oh yeah, nobody. Not a fucking soul. How about Leonardo from the Ninja Turtles? How many people did the Ninja Turtles affect? They weren't even real. How about the Power Rangers? How many people did the Power Rangers get into the martial arts? These are characters. Yeah. And at the end of the day, like when you have somebody like a Bruce Lee, right? What winds up inspiring people? Is it the ability to be able to beat people up? 9 times out of 10, that's not it. Yeah. It's not. It's just not. It's a fantasy.
It's crazy, bro. The Power Rangers. I just made a couple memes 2 weeks ago, basically saying, "Don't believe what you see on TV. Go train," kind of thing. Because that's like the message you get from watching those types of shows. Like that's what kind of got me started or wanted me to start years ago into karate, but I never started. It was Power Rangers. I was like, holy shit, I want to like morph and get my Dragon Zord and maybe do a couple kicks here and there. But it's stuff like that. It really throws you off.
Well, I think that what winds up happening is most people are just super hypocritical in the way that they view things. Yeah. They have these things that they loved that got them involved and that they really enjoy, like a Shaw Brothers Kung Fu movie or like John Wick, or you watch like these things and they inspire you. Yeah. And then you wind up getting into the martial arts and then you wind up getting surrounded by a lot of people who on average will not last past a year. True. And so you have all of this echo chamber of what makes a martial artist. It's being told to you predominantly by people who will never last in this industry. It's true. So why the fuck do we listen to them? Like, it just blows my mind. Yeah. Why do we give two shits? At the end of the day, if you go to a martial arts program and you set yourself goals and you yourself are bettering yourself, who fucking cares what someone else thinks about you?
Exactly.
Who fucking cares? Like, you'll have people tell you that if you're in Taekwondo, you're not in real martial art. You need to go do jiu-jitsu. Well, what if their goal was to be an Olympic-level Taekwondo gold medalist?
Exactly.
Well, how the fuck are they going to get that if they're in jiu-jitsu?
It's true. Everyone has different goals too.
Exactly. So why do we shit on everyone else's goals? Where's the honor in that? The integrity in that? True.
And I want to go back to what you said, like people getting, let's say, BJ Penn his black belt in 3 years. Like for someone like me, I'm a little bit older, of a wife, of son. I don't have as much time as I used to. So for me, jiu-jitsu, if I'm lucky, twice a week. But there's dudes in there who train every day or twice a day. They can train up to 10 times a week. I know this one guy goes 10 to 11 times a week. That's fucking nuts. And I started before him, and he already surpassed me. Clearly, he surpassed me. Not because he's younger, because he's putting in the work. So it's normal that people can excel at a faster rate. And even if they get their whatever black belt in 4 or 5 years, yeah, it's understandable because this guy's doing competitions. He's trained 10 to 12 times a week. He's doing competition after everything possible. He's even taking wrestling classes outside of jiu-jitsu. It's like, yeah, this guy is going to level up super fast. So I have to agree with what you said on before. Like, it's not bullshit because people get their whatever black belt faster. It's just that it's the amount of time you put into that sport. Your goal. What's your goal? That's all it is.
Yeah, and if you go to one art, there is no universal standard for what is or what is not a black belt.
Yeah.
It's all individual preferences and thoughts and ideals and ideologies that in learning something completely different. If you go to a karate, it's not going to be the same as going to jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Jiu-jitsu is extremely complicated. It's something that has technique after technique that never ends.
No.
And I think that that's an amazing part of jiu-jitsu is because it does get so intricate and it does continue to expand and grow. Whereas certain arts didn't do that. There is like once you learn these set techniques, you got it. That is, you now know those techniques. That's what that's for. And I'm not saying that you can't advance, but I'm saying that when it comes down to what your standards are, it's not a bad thing to have different standards for different arts because they just simply are different.
Yeah. And that's another thing like I want to talk about. Like, you might agree with me on this one. Whenever people ask you, what's the best martial art? I find that's an insane question to ask because there'll never be an answer. Because for me personally, if I'm doing BJJ, I can't say BJJ is the number one sport or martial art to study and you'll be good. You can't. Like, you need, if you want to really learn everything, you have to get a mix of these styles. So that's why they call like MMA kind of style. Like, you can learn a little bit of wrestling, you learn how to take your takedowns, a little bit of jiu-jitsu for your groundwork, Muay Thai, kickboxing, taekwondo. Like, there's different levels. Like, you can't just have, there's always this conversation. No, jiu-jitsu is the best. No, karate is the best. No, boxing the best. Or Muay Thai. It never ends. It's like there is no perfect martial art. Do you find people constantly have this argument where it's like, yeah, you gotta do jiu-jitsu or you gotta do this kind of thing?
Yeah, when I go live on Instagram, it's always a question that pops up. Like, what if you had one martial art you could do, what would it be? And I think that that's a stupid ass question. I think mostly that's a silly question because one, you will never have that happen to you. Two, body mechanics is body mechanics is body mechanics. If I reach my arm out to grab someone's hair, if I make a fist and punch someone in the face, the movement of my arm is almost identical. The only difference is one, my fist closes at impact, and the other, my fist closes before impact, right? Like, that's the mechanics are the same, but you would call those two different things. One you would call boxing, and the other one you would just call dirty because I'm grabbing someone by the hair, right? But body mechanics is still almost all universally the same. You'll see a lot of crossover from a lot of different martial arts. Like one of the things I noticed like over the years is like learning a good stand and base and understanding that a stand and base, the movement is more than just stand and base. You're going to use that a lot. Like on a bigger level, like if we're saying a big movement, the stand and base will take you from the ground all the way to standing. Mm-hmm. If you're talking about a little movement, it's almost identical to shrimping.
Yeah, it's true.
Like if you really break it down, I'm not posting on my hand, but I'm posting on my shoulder. You know, like I'm still raising my foot up. I'm still picking my hips up off the ground. If I wanted to finish that movement in a bigger way, I wouldn't just be shrimping. I'd be moving myself all the way to standing. But if you break it down, those movements are extremely similar. And then you start finding a lot of movements like that in other martial arts that are really similar. So I don't think that you can separate it all that simply. Also, when it comes down to what's best, it's not what's best, it's what's best for you. Situation dictates technique. 100% all the time, no exception. Situation dictates technique. If your situation is that you're 300 pounds overweight and you want to have gastric bypass surgery and the doctor looks at you and says, hey, you need to lose 30 pounds. The situation is if you don't get in shape, you're going to fucking die.
Yeah.
That's all. That's the situation you're in.
Facts.
However you got there, that's it. So now, what's the technique? Well, the technique is you need to figure out how to lose 30 pounds so you can have gastric bypass surgery. All right. At the end of the day, you're going to have a lot of people give you a lot of advice. Well, hey, man, I want to lose weight. I think martial arts is the thing that I would like to get into. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to deal with all of these other issues, right? Health issues, probably a lot of joint issues. You're probably going to have to deal with a lot, right?
Yeah.
What's going to make you lose that 30 pounds is whatever you're going to fucking show up to.
100%.
Is Taekwondo the thing that's fun for you? Fuck. Maybe it's not even the art. Maybe it's just the coach themselves. You show up to an Aikido class and your Aikido coach is charismatic. He makes you want to show up. He makes you want to practice. He makes you want to train. He makes you want to diet. and that's the thing that makes you lose 30 pounds, your situation was you were going to fucking die unless you got inspired.
Mm-hmm.
Your technique was you found someone who inspired you and you kept showing up.
True.
That was the art that was perfect for that guy.
Yeah, it's true. Well said. Well said. Let's enjoy my smoothie here. And out of curiosity, Rob, are you still blocked or unblocked from what's that guy from Detroit there? Dusty? I forget.
Yeah, I think he wound up unblocking me. I think that because he's probably not getting as enough attention as he was getting at one time, he's probably like unblocking people and hoping people will start sharing his shit again.
Make fun of me again.
Like at the end of the day, I've made a decision about like the Dale thing. I offered him multiple times over the course of several years. We will meet at a neutral facility. I will pressure test your stuff, and then we'll figure out if it works or not. I offered that so many times. His answer before was, well, why don't you just come to our facility in Detroit? Because now I'm not a fucking moron. That's why. First of all, if I go to his facility, he doesn't have to allow me to film. Mm-hmm. Second of all, if I go to his facility, he could trespass me before I walk in the door. He doesn't have to, he can trespass me anytime, by the way. If someone does get hurt, technically that could be considered a premeditated crime. Yes. If we had a conversation about testing techniques and stuff like that, that might be misconstrued. Mm-hmm. If I get hurt, who's there to help me? I'm automatically going into his home court. So we're talking about all of his students there and all that good stuff. Why would I want to do that? So I offered a solution of, let's meet at a neutral facility. Mm-hmm. So me and like a camera dude, he brings a camera dude and we sit down and we figure out how to pressure test. Another thing is when I talk about pressure test, a pressure test is an actual experiment. So what we would do is we would set down conditions and ground rules as to how this would work. So one of the techniques that he has is like someone has you like back mounted and then you're able to roll and then they fall off of you for some reason. The test would be, okay, your theory is that you can use this if someone sits on you this way. Yes. All right, well, let's try it with minimal resistance. And then let's try that with full resistance and see what happens. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Yeah. That's how that would work. We don't need to fist fight to see if your one technique will work. Exactly. Like, keep in mind, even Anderson Silva has lost a fight. Yes. Does that mean Anderson Silva's shit doesn't work ever? Yeah. No, it just means he lost a fucking fight. So in order to actually pressure test technique, you have to set up situations for technique. But at the end of the day, one thing that we were able to do is make him internationally known as the face of incompetence. Yeah. So he is the face. When you see him, you go, that guy does not know what he's talking about.
Exactly. So that's a win for it there. And actually,
and then, he had Sean Strickland when he was at SHOT Show. And Sean Strickland, again, is another one of, he's a realist in terms of what works and what does not. And he doesn't like Dale Brown. Which most people who know what they're doing don't, unless you're clout chasing, which is a lot of people have done that. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, he has followers, so I'm going to kind of like go along with it so I can get more views. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, you're just aiding and abetting this turd of a human being. Yeah. But yeah, fuck Dale Brown, man. At the end of the day, I don't give, if somebody could hit him with a truck and piss on him for all I care. Like, I'm done. Like, I did what I could do. I did the best that I could. At the end of the day, I don't want to give him any more attention.
No, for sure. And it's funny you mentioned Sean Strickland because that was the next question. I actually remember seeing a fast clip on Instagram how he pretty much, I don't know if he gave him a kick or whatever, but it didn't work out for Dale and his table just broke. And it was like the funniest shit I ever saw. Did you see that part? I think
he was at like SHOT Show has a lot of things going on. So most likely they were probably in some type of a gun range or a gun shop during SHOT Show. And he tried that wrist lock crap. But he's always done this against like people who never resisted because he instructs them not to resist. Yeah. Like, people miss this about Dale Brown. It's so funny because most people, again, people don't know what a professional con artist sounds and looks like. Mm-hmm. Dale Brown is a professional con artist. Mm-hmm. So he does these things that are contradictory that most people, they hear and they see, but they don't really register. So he'll do this thing where he like talks about having a firearm and he talks about not keeping around in the chamber. Something he preaches quite a bit. Don't keep around in the chamber. But then he'll do these experiments with airsoft guns where he'll have someone standing across from him and he'll have them point the gun at him. And he'll say, when you see me move, pull the trigger. And then Dale will reach behind his back, pull out another airsoft gun and pull the trigger. Well, the problem with that thought process is that Dale always says, don't keep around in the chamber. So like if I am listening to your advice and you listened to your own advice. When you go to pull the gun out, you will have to rack it before you're able to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? You were already shot in that time.
Yeah.
So it's a dumb experiment,
Yeah.
but he gets people with it all the time.
For sure.
Like Sean also offered Dale, I think, $200,000 to meet him in like a area and actually spar.
Oh, wow.
Tom DeBlass offered $50,000 to him if he decided he wanted to spar one of Tom DeBlass's female students. Like, he has this like habit of very specifically picking people out that he knows either he can manipulate or he knows he can beat. It's just what he does. He never goes outside that bubble, and he's been able to do that for quite a while now, very successfully. But at the end of the day, everyone knows he's a fraud.
Yeah.
And I think that once people start looking into like his actual like tax records and shit like that, I think they're going to realize like he's not a good person either.
No. And I wanted to ask you one more question, Rob. I used to follow you more on my personal account, and I remember actually joined your live once. Actually, I think we spoke about COVID and stuff like in Montreal, but it was so far back. And I actually asked you the whole documentary. How's that going on right now? Because I know it's
going awesome. So as of right now, we have Jocko Willink on board as an executive producer of our film.
Okay.
So he just came on board, which is amazing. We're represented by a company called UTA.
Okay.
It's funny because I get asked a lot about the documentary.
Yeah.
Like anyone can follow all the information about the documentary. We have an entire page dedicated to it. It's called Mcdojolife DOC on Instagram.
Okay.
It's been in our description and in my bio on Instagram the entire time we've been working on the film for years.
Yeah.
It's been just sitting there. If you want more information, go to this page.
All right.
And still people are like, how come you don't have any info? I'm like, well, first of all, what it lets me know is, one, that means that person did not donate to the film. Because anyone who donated to the project was sent multiple emails about what's going on through our Indiegogo page about all the updates. Also, anyone who's ever given us a dime for anything, if anyone's ever given us a t-shirt or bought a t-shirt, if you've ever like donated to like a badge on Instagram Live, if you've ever donated to our YouTube, anything at all, you have access to that page. So if anybody's listening and you're like, oh, well, I gave a couple bucks, hey, come on in. Like, I'll give you complete access to behind the scenes stuff.
Nice.
The hard part with our documentary is that people have fairly short memories about major historic events. There was this little thing that happened that really affected the entire world that people might have forgotten about called COVID. And that happened right after we got our crowdfunding. So we got together years ago and we were like, we should do a documentary about this. Got the production team together. After we did that, that took about 3 months to gather the yeses and everybody in place. Like, all right, now we have the team. How much is this going to cost? We made like a preliminary budget on what we thought it would cost then. Then it was like another couple months of us figuring out, all right, well, let's do a crowdfund. How is that going to look in terms of tiers? Like, okay, well, we're going to give you this for this donation and all that. Then we were like, all right, when should we release this so it's the most useful, so it does so well, which was during a Conor McGregor fight at the time. So we released it. We got 90 days in, which is all Indiegogo allows you to raise funds for. We raised like really short amount of funds because we had two major hiccups. One, the first hiccup was there was a guy, I guess, who ran some kind of famous jiu-jitsu site who, like, I guess a year or two before that had said he was going to make a documentary about all the red belts in jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
And I wish I knew his name because I would shout it to the mountaintops because whoever this is a huge piece of shit.
Oh, God.
So that person was supposed to make this documentary. They crowdfunded for it. They raised their total crowdfunding funds. Then they took the money and disappeared.
Fudge.
So a lot of people were jaded by that and didn't want to do that again because they felt like it might end up the same way.
Yeah.
I have nothing to do with that fucking guy. He can kiss my ass and the hole. Like,
Shit.
that dude's a horrible person.
Yeah.
Anybody out there who knows who he is or what he did, send me that info. I'll do an entire story about it. But then after that, though, some asshole goes on YouTube and sees us crowdfunding for this major actual documentary, takes a shitload of my clips from like Instagram and all that good stuff,
Okay.
does like a 20 or 30 minute, like what he called a documentary about fake martial arts. And he rode the wave of us crowdfunding with all this attention it was getting. And he put it out there on YouTube like a month in. So our first month is crushing it. We're like, yeah, we're definitely going to wind up reaching the numbers we want. And then he started like advertising it, and people were like, well, I don't want to see this. Like the actual documentary, we can just look at it for free on YouTube. Like, that's not ours. That has nothing to do with it. So this fucking clout chasing douchebag takes this, makes some shitty YouTube video, and it winds up getting like 9 million views or some crap like that.
Wow.
And like it just completely derailed what we were trying to do. So I was like, son of a bitch. So like we're doing a real documentary, not like some voiceover clipped edited stuff. All original footage, start to finish, making sure people can see into these cults. So then we raised $20,000, which was only 10% of our funding. Then we're like, all right, well, do you still want to move forward with the team? And the team was like, yeah, we're actually going to do the rest for free. So they took the bite. And I was like, I'll take the bite too. I pulled out another 20 of my own money. And then we decided, all right, well, we're going to go ahead and start moving forward with filming anyway, which isn't enough to film the full documentary we wanted, but we can put something together. Yeah. So about a month or two, I think, before we're set to film, like, because you have to schedule this out. It's not just like, hey, guys, everybody should just quit their job. When we only have X amount of dollars that you're going to have to do for free. So then about 2 months before we're scheduled to film, COVID happens. And by COVID happens, I mean specifically the COVID lockdowns happen. So like all these rules and regulations start flaring up. And as most people know during that time, a lot of martial arts schools were shut down.
Yeah, that's true.
Like the rules would not allow them to be open, or if you did, you had to do it in secret. Like it was very shitty at the time for school martial arts owners and gym owners. So we were like, well, what do we do? And we were like, well, we kind of have to wait, because at the beginning of COVID wasn't the same as like at the end. Like at the beginning of COVID, it was really scary shit.
Yeah, I remember that.
And so we were like, all right, well, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Like, we're good. The money's sitting in an escrow account. It's not going anywhere. Like, we'll just see what happens, right? And then so it took about 2 years, like, for us to finally figure out when we were going to film. Because, like, I guess about a year and a half in, lockdown started easing up. And we're like, oh, man, there's an opportunity. So I like went and like had a whole bunch of advertisements made, and I was going to go across the country, and I was going to stop at all these schools and do like a tour all the way there. And then it was 2 days before I'm scheduled to leave, the lockdowns went right back up again. And I was like, what the fuck, man?
It's like the perfect
and
story.
So I had to, it sucked. The whole thing sucked, right? But I was like, all right, we'll just wait. And then finally the lockdowns eased up enough to where we were like, look, we're going to film no matter what. So I finally got out there. And we filmed January through March. So we got 3 months worth of content filmed. We were able to film with cult experts, psychologists, people who had been victims of cults, people who wrote books about being in martial arts cults, people who were doctors, and people who were in high positions of power in religion, to be able to talk to them about the dynamics of martial arts and religion and how similar they are. We filmed a shitload. We filmed 2 major experiments. We were able to go to the Martial Arts History Museum. We were able to film a lot. Then we took that, put that together, and made a sizzle reel, which is like a trailer for something that's not done yet. And so we start shopping it around, like, hey, who would like to see this movie? And then we got a lot of people, man, that's fucking awesome. But like, the weird thing about Hollywood is there's a lot of people who root for you, but they won't stick their neck out for you. So they're like, yeah, that's a great idea. I'm like, well, we'd love some help. They were like, yeah, I can't help you. Like, why not? Well, at the end of the day, it's a huge risk for them, because if they decide to vouch for you and it's your first time out and then you bomb, it's a reflection on them. So we had a lot of that. Then finally we had a guy, his name's Jonathan Sadowski. I owe him a lot. He's a producer. He was a producer for 8-Bit Christmas on HBO. He was in a movie called The Goods. He is an actor and a producer, but he also helped me out. He's also a fan of the page. Nice. So we showed him the sizzle reel. He was like, this is awesome. And we were like, yeah, like the problem is like, we don't like the trailer. Like, we think that it could be better. We don't want to settle. And he was like, you shouldn't settle. Mm-hmm. He just straight up let us know, like, this is something that could be really big. Don't settle. So we were like, all right, well, we won't. He's like, I have a director for you. And he introduced us to a guy named Adam Wood, who's on the team now. He is fantastic. He repurposed our sizzle reel. He was able to get that to the hands of the guys over at UTA, which is called United Talent Agency, one of the top 3 talent agencies in the world. Wow. Now we're represented by them. Nice. Then luckily, Mo from ADCC, who I've known for quite a while, he invited me to go out to ADCC last year. Nice. And I think it was I don't remember when exactly they had ADCC, but I was there. But while I was there, Jocko Willink was there, and I wanted to shake his hand and thank him because he had talked about a piece that I did for YouTube about a child who was killed by his instructor. Mm-hmm. And so I went up and I was like, yo, man, I just want to say thank you so much for shouting me out on your podcast. Thank you for the support over the years. You've been cool as shit. Echo has worked with me before, and we've done stuff, which has been really, really cool. And I've interviewed him for my page, and I just wanted to thank him. And when I walked up to him immediately, he was like, oh, hey, Rob. I was like, oh, this dude even knows who I am. It's awesome. He asked me straight up how the documentary was going. And I explained to him everything I just explained to you. Yeah. And he looks at me and goes, how come you didn't ask me for funding? And I was like, I didn't know that was an option. Yeah, like, all right, well, I love that. So I flew out to his place, Victory Martial Arts in San Diego. So I flew out and met with him, and we had like this amazing meeting. It was about 2.5 hours long, and we just talked. Yeah. It was me, my director, a producer, our lawyer, him, and I think maybe his assistant or someone else was in the room with him. We talked for quite a while, and he was like, I'm on board. Let's do this. And he came on board. So now he's an executive producer of the film, which wasn't that long ago that got solidified. Okay. And so now I think he's officially been on board for about a month now. And so now we're moving forward, having conversations with a couple other investors right now. So we're trying to get it to the budget that we want. So that way we can make it the way that we want to make it. Because we know once we get this done, a lot of those doors are going to slam close probably because we're outing frauds. Yeah. So we filmed with 5 of the biggest frauds in the industry currently. We did great experiments, including holding a seminar where I just taught bullshit to see if regular people would fall for it. They all did. We had a fraud come and teach us a seminar, and I filled the classroom full of nothing but people who knew what they were doing. That footage is pure gold. It's all coming together. It's just a matter of like, if we did not have that 2-year gap, it wouldn't be as long as people think. Well, like it's the most frustrating part out of it. People are like, when's it coming out? I'm like, bitch, 2 years was during COVID. What are you talking about? Like, take that out and then condense it. And technically, we've only been working on the project for like 2 years. Yeah, you know.
Well, I think that's the missing part too. Like I said before, you actually went through the perfect storm. You ran into these 2 situations where like, holy shit! Now I understand why, and like why people always constantly asking, but at least people are gonna understand why. Like, and you got Jocko. Man, I'm so excited. And
yeah, man, and we've had really cool support, man. Like we met with the guys from Dick House, which is the Jackass crew for anyone who doesn't know. So I got to meet with Johnny Knoxville and Jeff Tremaine.
It gets better.
That was very cool. They had to pass. They actually had a ton of projects I didn't know about at the time, but they did meet with us. That was very cool. That's awesome. So just being able to have that meeting, and that was like an unsolicited thing. Yeah. I just like reached out. I was like, hey man, I'm working on this thing. Would you be willing to like listen? I'm not saying people should do that. That's not the proper channels, but he followed the page. We had some interaction before. So I figured why not just reach out and see if he'd be willing. And he was. But we've had a lot of that. We're still in talks with Amazon right now.
Oh, nice.
I had a meeting with global partnerships at the UFC last week. And so we're thinking about seeing if Fight Pass might be willing to pick it up. It's not exactly what I would like because I'd like it to be a bigger, broader audience than just people in martial arts. Yeah. But we think that if Fight Pass did pick it up, that it would guarantee be a hit on Fight Pass for sure. Because we have a savvy audience. Yeah. The audience would be nothing but people who would be curious about that world. But we're still looking to try to make it bigger and better. And the constant grind is what people don't see.
Yeah.
Like, I can make an update every day and make people as disappointed as I am every day. I can be like, yep, we talked to another person that said no. Like, I don't know if you guys want to keep hearing that shit. I'm sure you guys want to hear the yeses.
Yeah. Oh, that's good to know. Well, Robert, I gotta thank you very, very much for doing this today with me. I'm so happy. I was like, when you said yes, I was like, oh my god. My wife's like, why are you screaming? Like, then I explained who you were. She's like, who? And she's like, okay, because she doesn't follow anything on Instagram for martial arts. But she's like,
yeah, I got you.
Then she's like, yeah, I'm so happy for you. So I was like super happy when you said yes. And thank you again. Like, I know you weren't feeling well this week, and again for coming again today. I'm so happy. And I can't wait whenever your documentary does come. I can't wait. I know it takes time, but thanks for all those updates and really answered all my questions. Right? Oh my god,
Yeah, for sure,
dude,
dude.
that
Well,
that fuck, that's
I
life, man.
always said that I'd go on anyone's show that ever asked, so I always stick to that. That will never change.
Appreciate
I don't
that.
give a shit what's going on in my life. I'll do anyone's show whoever asked. I'll answer every direct message I ever get, even though that's a nightmare in itself.
That's true.
But I always will. So I'm just a dude. I'm a dude that loves this industry. And if I have to like spread the message by speaking to every person who likes what I do, then I will speak to every person.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter to me. It's just a project. It's something that I think is important.
for sure.
And so having these conversations is fun for me. I love talking shop.
Me too, dude. And for sure, like I'll stick to what you said. You always reply to every message I asked you, even years ago. So you always answered everything I wrote to you. So man, that's amazing. With all your followers, like, dude, thanks for that, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And if anybody out there is like, well, who didn't answer my message? You have to remember that I get roughly organically. This is just the last time I checked, which was years ago. So I'm sure it's more now, but organically on Instagram alone, I get 250 messages a day from people I've never spoken to before.
God.
That's not including messages of people who have already written me. And the only reason I know is because Instagram separates your inboxes. Yeah. So you have like a primary, you have like a general, yeah. And you have like it's like a inbox of people requests, yeah. Right? People who have never sent you a message before.
Exactly.
So like that request box is always full.
Yeah.
And then that means that there's more people who are in the general box that are just constantly. So if I haven't answered you yet, I'm not ignoring you. I never would do that. That's not me. Just send me another one. It'll shoot it to the top. Instagram, for the love of all that is holy and good, if there is anyone who works at Instagram, add one feature. It's very simple. It's a filter to where you can look at the oldest messages first. For the love of God, do that.
Like a normal inbox.
Because Instagram, good Lord, it is the worst. It's one little feature, man. It can't be that hard. I'd appreciate it.
All right, guys. On that note, have a good day. Rob, thanks again. Keep it classy, guys. Take care.